very often as leaders, we look for the silver bullet. The biggest, most positive impact is right underneath us. It's our people team. And as a leader, if you realize that, then you can keep implementing it all the time. You've actually lost the ability to see or make a decision. Because that uncomfortable feeling of removing yourself for a few minutes, make sure that that training you give is impactful and long-lasting. I help leaders with exactly this.
Welcome, Clayton Drotsky, to Contact Center SA.
Thank you, Lance. Thanks very much for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, formerly from South Africa, Johannesburg, I believe, and now living in the UK.
Yeah, temporarily, I'm only here for another 3 years. Then
Okay.
I'm hopefully coming home. Yeah, that's the plan. That is the plan.
Well, we'll be happy to have you back. I know that you're in and out of South Africa in any case. So it's not like you're missing much and you enjoying our load shedding when you do come over.
Yeah, you know what? I think South Africa is going to be by default the first green country on earth, because you're going to have to be forced to have solar or something.
Don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. So we're going to make all our targets for carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Probably the first country to ever do that.
Well, I think that's an interesting topic. Our topic today we're going to chat about is a contribution that you did in an article in the Call Center Helper magazine or on their website called 12 Reasons You Shouldn't Skip Training in a Short Staff Call Center. So it's an interesting topic because I think a lot of call centers, especially the BPO world, is very guilty of not going through with training, especially when things are tough on the phones and there's queues and so on. So I thought it was an interesting topic to tackle in terms of looking at it from a perspective where it's a motivator. And I think that's where your part of the article really stood out to me. And I'd like to quote your very first line there. You say, if you'd like to have a highly motivated team who find joy and satisfaction in what they do, then training is very important. Would you like to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, of course. So for me, motivation or to motivate people to pitch up every day and do their best, you need to have that internal flame burning for a long time. So think of yourself as a leader. You need your team, their internal flames burning a long time. And we can motivate them through if then reward. If you do this, I'll give you this. The one that does the best today will get this. The first one to do this gets a half day. All those little things. Those are great, but it's like a friend of mine in the UK says, it's very short term. It's like having McDonald's as your only source of food. It's very short term because that kind of motivation, eating McDonald's every day, sure, it's going to help your hunger, but it's going to not be good in a month or 2 months' time. So how do you keep it going for a long time? And very often as leaders, we look for the silver bullet or the magical process that's going to make everything fantastic. When actually the biggest, most positive impact is right underneath us. It's our people. So if we do the basics right, and we want to motivate or keep a team going for a long time, then we need to invest in those people. So I know that there's times when training just seems like far-fetched because we're so busy chasing our tails. We want to save costs so we don't employ the people we maybe need enough people, or we've got a contract that and some SLAs we need to adhere to, so we want to get there first before training. So training kind of takes a back foot. But you can do training in any interaction you have. Training doesn't have to be formal all the time or a half a day off the phone. It can be very, very interactive between you and your team. And as a leader, if you realize that, then you can keep implementing it all the time.
So that's an interesting point because I would say that to be a coaching type function, where you're training people or coaching them as they're doing their job. Would you equate that as being the same coaching and training, especially if it's on the job?
Yeah, definitely. Leaders are sort of coaches, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because I always tell the story of this guy. When I used to work in a call center back in Johannesburg, I used to sit on the 4th floor. I was the call center manager at the time. I had about 150 people sitting in front of me, and I could always see the lift. And whoever came into the building or into the 4th floor, I could see who it was. Yeah. And we had this guy, he was an overseas, he was based in Europe, but he was our business development director, eventually became the vice president. He wasn't my direct report, but we were drawn to this guy, right? Because when he came in, he spoke to everyone. He gave everyone time. The cleaner, the site leader, doesn't matter who they were. And I'd find myself, Lance, having to go somewhere or do something. If I heard he was in the building, then I wouldn't go. I delayed myself leaving my desk because I was looking for that interaction with him.
Wow.
Because when he finally got to my desk, because he had spoken to every single person on the way to me,
Yeah.
what he would do is he would make you feel very special, because the way he listened to you, he made you feel like you're the only person on earth, right? He made you feel very good about yourself. But more so, he would ask you about something that just you and he spoke about, something that you were busy with. And he'd ask you how it went. And if you said it went well, then he would celebrate with you.
Wow.
And ask you what went well. And if it didn't go well, he'd say to you, so if you had the opportunity again, what would you do differently? What'd you learn? And those little things, made me you drawn to this guy. So we'd follow him wherever he went. If he wanted to, I always say this, if he wanted to steal horses, we would probably go with him. But that's the kind of leader your people want. They don't need the training every single day. They just need to understand that what they're doing is right, and what they do has meaning. And you, as a leader, can reinforce that feeling that they're on the right track. Because as a leader, what they look for you, what they're looking for in you is support, guidance, and approval. And that's what they want.
I want to read another snippet out of the article where you say, and I think it ties into what you just said, if an agent feels valued because there is investment made in their development and future, they feel part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's probably true for most people. And I know you're referring to agents there, but I think it's important that it's universal in nature, in terms of, doesn't matter what level you're at, you want to feel like you're part of something. And the way that happens, I would imagine, and you can correct me where I'm wrong here, is by leaders putting and investing in time into the person or into the people around them, in order to ensure that they actually know what's happening, number one, but more importantly, that any gaps is being bridged in a way that makes them feel valued. I wanted to ask you, especially in the contact center or call center world, and BPO is typically I guess guilty of this, where training becomes the back burner when things are heavy. And I think I alluded to this earlier on. How would you address that situation when, let's say, there must be training done because there's a new product out and the client needs the training to be facilitated in order to upskill the agents, team leaders, ops managers, whatever the case would be. And now calls are coming through, queues are hitting, service level is dropping, abandonment rates are going up, and I need to pull off, I don't know, 5% of my staff for training. What's your take on that? How do you think a leader and a manager in that situation should deal with that particular scenario?
To get to that scenario, it tells me that might have been a lack of communication between the different parts and constituents in the business. Because the call center can only do what the call center can do. Their job and their purpose is actually very easy to understand. They field the calls with customers in the BPO scenario. If there's more customers coming on, that's great work from the customer experience team or the customer success team or the business development team, the asset team. They're doing a great job. But then to get to that situation, something tells me there's a bit of a communication lapse, because of course we want more business, but not to the detriment of our people. Because if we're chasing our tails all the time because of new business coming in and the call volumes are high, then people are going to start, leaders are not going to get the time that they need to spend with their team. Their team members are going to start feeling a little bit like, why are we even here? Because we're working. I can't even take my lunch break. I'm not allowed to take my lunch break because I'm working so hard. So no one really values my time or my efforts. And they start emotionally detaching themselves from the business. And then you're in a bigger problem. So to get to that situation, already something might have not happened. But for a team, for a leader in that situation, if you're not in it and you have to deal with it, you're going to have to make a plan to see how quickly you can get that training done. Because the training needs to be done properly. If it's not done properly, then you're going to have to revisit it. And then it's more time off the phones. So you're going to have to find a way of how you can. It's like sometimes, it's a scenario I use often with leaders that I'm working with now. Is Lawrence, they get so stuck in their day-to-day tasks. They can't see the wood from the trees. And it's called a learned helplessness, where you are so stuck in your daily activities, you've actually lost the ability to see or make a decision or choose something. You're so stuck in it. So leaders who are in this position find it so difficult just to imagine hovering above yourself as a helicopter for a few minutes, escaping and saying, right, this is my team. These are the members of my team. These are our tasks. Are we doing it as efficiently as we can? How can we, because that uncomfortable feeling of removing yourself for a few minutes, even if it's half an hour, that uncomfortable feeling will save you happiness in the future. But yeah, if you're in that situation where there's calls coming in and you need to take 5% of people off the phones, make sure that that training you give is impactful and long lasting, that it's done correctly. And then you can start fielding the calls to those 5% and, like a rolling training, I guess.
Yeah, I find that unfortunately in most scenarios becomes a breathing moment for the agents, right? Taking them off the phones for that period when the queues are piling up. It's like a breathing moment. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. The challenge I've in my experience with that is that when we're in the room, it takes longer for the agents and team leaders, whatever, to actually settle down and actually focus on what they're training, because everybody's got what's just happened in the center on their minds, and you almost need to get that out in order to get their focus. So I find that it's quite a challenge when you for the trainers to take people off the phones and they've just come through, I don't know, an hour or two of consistent queuing. You almost have to debrief people first in order to help them refocus, and that takes away training time. In your experience, though, from a leadership perspective, are there any mechanisms that could be used in order to help facilitate that process of, I guess, debriefing in a more efficient and quicker way?
Yeah, I mean, the trainers that I've worked with in the past, first of all, they keep things really simple. Simplify the training. It's much more difficult to keep things simple than to overcomplicate it. And we like to overcomplicate it. But keeping it simple for the person who's receiving it, it's easy for them to understand and easy for them to implement and remember. So try and simplify it as best as possible. Stick to the basics. Do the basics well, and the rest will follow. But to get them out of that, I mean, and you're right, Lance, it's just a human thing. We're coming off this call, Q, whatever it may be. We get into a training facility, and yes, it is a bit of time off. We're like, oh, thank you very much. I'm finally sitting and having a bit of a breather. So for trainers, I've seen trainers play a game or just do something to refocus people. It could be a quick fire game. It could be a whip around about what you're proud of this week. What's the one thing that you've done this week that you're really proud of, or what's the one thing you struggled with that you don't want anyone to ask you to do again because you're not sure how to do it. Trainers, just as leaders, you get really good insights on people that way. But it's nice to open the room, because very often what you find is you don't get a chance very often for everyone to be in the same room. And training is quite a nice opportunity because you get people from different teams. So maybe you'll have 3 inbound agents, 4 outbound agents, a couple of retention agents, whatever it may be, in the same room at the same time. That doesn't often happen. So when they are in a training facility, what's nice in a group discussion is sharing some best practices too, to get their minds flowing. So asking things like, what have you guys done this month that you're absolutely very proud of in the inbound team? What's one thing you hate customers saying and why?
Yeah.
And then how do we deal with that in the outbound team? Because, the knowledge sharing is massive. Yeah. And they don't often get the opportunity to do that. So that also breaks a bit of the ice going into a training but then keep the training simple. I always say, how do you explain tennis to someone? Keep it as simple as humanly possible. Yeah. But clearly, clear and simple is what I say.
So thanks. I think there's some real sound advice there, because it can be a real arduous job from a trainer's perspective. I think taking over a group of individuals that just needs to debrief and get themselves into a state of learning. From a leadership perspective, Clayton, that can be quite a highly stressful situation where I'm responsible for my performance metrics, but I'm also responsible for people and their development and making sure that the client's needs are met around training and upskilling and so on of my staff. What advice would you give to leaders in that situation, managers, head of operations, just in terms of dealing with that kind of stress, in order to ensure that the day is actually seen through in a positive way and making sure that the negativity is not filtering through to any of their staff?
Control the controllables. Control the controllables. Control what you can and do that really well. That was something I used to, in my early days as a leader, get stuck in, is I tried to control everything. The training, the agents, from above, the business development team and what work they were bringing in. I tried to control it all. I couldn't. And then you feel like you are chasing your tail, Control the controllables. Remember that at the end of the day, there's lots of team members there. If you've done the basics well as a leader, you've included everyone from the beginning in the game plan. Everyone understands exactly why your team exists, what they want to achieve, and why they want to achieve it. What's the purpose of this team? They all understand the game plan, and you've included them. So I've said to you, for example, Lance, this is our plan in inbound A. This is the role we play in the team, and this is your contribution. This here is how valuable your contribution is to us, our team, achieving our target, and then bigger than that, the business achieving what our goals and strategies. So you're including people in that. You're including, you're valuing, you're belonging. Because once the basics are in place, Lance, the agent, knows that if I'm going for training, Clayton has thought about it, my leader has thought about it, because my leader's got my back. They want what's best for me. They make me feel good about myself. So when he's made a decision for me to go to training, I know it's the right one. He's done all the stuff necessary for me to take it at that time. So my trust is there, and I know he's looking out for my best interest. We probably need this training. I'm not gonna question it, I'm not gonna argue it. If you've done the basics right, everything else becomes easier. So taking people off the phones, they understand that you've actually done all the due diligence to know that they know you're looking out for them. So this is the best time to do it. Let's go.
So there's a real strategic way of thinking about next steps in terms of things like training and letting your team know exactly what that strategy is, so that they feel part of it.
Yeah. If they feel part of it, then they feel like they're contributing, they feel like they belong to something bigger than themselves. They will feel, like I said in that article, they'll feel more satisfaction in what they do. It'll bring them joy, and they look forward to doing it. When that carte blanche music comes on a Sunday, you never know, they might be looking forward to Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's possible if the environment motivates them.
Well, this is essentially your I think your last sentence in the article that reads, they may find joy and satisfaction in what they do, and if they enjoy what they do, they'll look forward to it and naturally excel at it. For contact center, it's a win-win. That's exactly what you're saying. It's make them want to find joy in it, essentially.
Yeah, go home happy.
And I think it's important that the leaders demonstrate the agent's value. And demonstrating, I mean, explaining to them what their purpose within the context of the contact center or call center is, whether it be sales, customer service, doesn't matter. There's an inherent function that they play that's important to the bigger picture of the organization. And I feel sometimes leaders don't necessarily bring that out enough. And so an agent sometimes, just because I talk to agents a lot and I train also as well, and I find that there's a disconnect sometimes between what the leaders are requiring to do in terms of their KPI mandate and so on, and what the agents think they should be doing in order to help the leader fulfill that KPI. And there's this disconnect because I find that the agents just think, oh, I must just take calls. And while that is the core function of the job, the act in taking the call in a customer service environment is not a small thing, because you can make the difference between whether that customer comes back as a repeat customer or whether they leave, and whether the word of mouth that they spread is good or bad. that's the significance for me of a call center agent and how important they are to any organization.
100%. Yeah. You know, that Maya Angelou quote, they won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you do, but they'll remember how you made them feel. For call center agents, you can live by that, going to every call, because it's such a complex role, call center agents. It's so complex and so tough at times. But if you know that on every call, that was what you were aiming for, a memorable experience for the person on the other side, you would leave happy and you'll get satisfaction from what you do. It's that burns that flame, you know. And for leaders, I understand what you're saying, that disconnect for leaders, because it can feel risky. If you're the leader of an operation or the leader of a team, at the end of the day, it is your head on the proverbial chopping block if things don't go well, right? So it is risky to leave accountability and responsibility, autonomy with others, because if things go well, it's the team as leaders. If things don't go well, it's you, right? So yes, you know that you need to make it happen, but doing those basics well, investing in spending time on the basics, inclusion, value, belonging, you know, motivation, confidence, and making people feel like they belong somewhere. You know, leaders have the ability to inspire others to do great things. If you've got those basics down, when the tough times come, everyone buckles down, because it's my baby too, and I'm going to make it work. So there's no like us and them. It's us. Let's do this, people. So you don't have to beg people to do stuff. When you're a leader that's done the basics well, those confrontational, those, you know, crucial conversations or tough scenarios are easier to deal with, because your people are comfortable with you. They know who you are. They know you're here for the right reasons. So having a crucial conversation, you don't have to avoid them as leaders. You can have them because they know exactly who you are and how you're going to react. They're comfortable with that.
Yeah, there's transparency.
Good place to be.
Clayton, that's some really good and inspiring words there. I think I'd like all leaders to take note of what's just been said, because I think it's an important lesson. And for those who are doing it, well done, because it's not easy. I think it's a difficult road, but I think once you get that right, there's a lot of reward at the end of it. Clayton, give us a bit of an understanding of your business and what you do. I know this is coming at the end, but I just think it's important that people know what business you're in.
Yeah, thanks, Lon. So I'm currently based in the UK. I've been here for 3 years. I've got a company called Growth Crew, and I'm a leadership consultant. So I help leaders with exactly this. You know, I help leaders understand the incredible opportunity they have to add value and get people or inspire people to do and be better. So I help leaders make the most of the opportunity of leaders. I also, because I spent so many years there in the contact center, I do help contact centers as well. So I help leaders in contact centers, I help agents in contact centers. But yeah, I'm a leader. The company is called Growth Crew, and we're leadership consultancy.
Awesome. I'll put your website. Have you got a website? I'm assuming. I'll put your website link.
The best place to get me is LinkedIn, because that's where, as you'll know, Lance, everyone who owns a business, we live on it.
We live on LinkedIn.
For our sins.
We live on LinkedIn. Clayton, thank you very much for your time. Some really good insights, and I think there's lots to be learned. You know, and I know you've got your own podcast or live streams coming up on LinkedIn. I'll put a link to that as well on this video, so that people can take a look at some of the input and insights you share on those podcasts.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lance, and also thanks for you and for this platform and giving people like me the opportunity to say what we want to say. So thank you for that. That's really appreciated.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Clayton.